That evening started out so simple. I thought I was just lending a hand like any mother would. But the way John looked at me, the words he chose, I knew this wasn't just about the help he'd asked for. There was something else, something deeper, that I wasn't expecting. Where are you watching us from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. It was early autumn, the kind of day where the sunlight feels softer, slipping in through the kitchen window in golden streaks. I was still in my house dress, hair pinned up loosely, when John stopped by. He'd been working on some home repairs at his place, and from the sound of his voice on the phone earlier, he sounded a little off. Not upset exactly, but quieter than usual. When he arrived, his work shirt was flecked with paint and there was a faint smudge on his cheek. I opened the door, smiling. You look like you've wrestled with a wall and lost. He gave me that half smile of his and shrugged. Could use a second pair of hands, Mom, and maybe a little company while I finish up. I didn't think twice. That's what mothers do. We show up. I grabbed a sweater, locked the door behind me, and followed him over. His house smelled faintly of sawdust and fresh paint when I stepped inside. Tools were scattered across the counter. A couple of empty coffee mugs sat near the sink, and the windows were open just enough to let in the crisp air. I rolled up my sleeves and started helping with the trim painting in the living room. We worked mostly in silence at first, the sound of the brush against the wall filling the quiet. I could feel his eyes on me sometimes, quick glances when he thought I wouldn't notice. There was a weight to it, though. Not discomfort, but as if he wanted to say something and wasn't sure how to begin. "Everything all right?" I asked, dipping the brush back into the paint. He hesitated, his hand still on the ladder. "Yeah, I guess I've just been thinking a lot lately. About us. About how things have been." His words hung there between us. I kept painting, giving him space, but inside I felt that little shift, like when the wind changes direction and you know rain's coming. What about us? I kept my voice light, but my chest tightened. He stepped down from the ladder, wiped his hands on an old rag, and leaned against the wall. I know I don't say it enough. How much I appreciate you. You've been there for me in ways most people wouldn't understand. I paused, turning to look at him. The sunlight through the window caught the edges of his face, softening his expression. There was something almost vulnerable in the way he held himself, like he was laying a piece of his heart out for me to see. "You don't have to thank me for that, John," I said quietly. "It's just part of being your mother." "I know, but it's more than that." His voice was low, deliberate. "Sometimes I wonder if you realize how much you've shaped me, how much your words, your patience, even the way you look at me, have mattered." I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't just casual gratitude. This was him opening a door to something he'd been carrying for a long time. I set my brush down, unsure whether to step into that space or wait for him to invite me further. The air between us felt warmer, charged somehow. I could hear the faint creak of the house settling, the distant hum of cars passing outside. He didn't look away, and I realized I wasn't looking away either. I gave him a small smile, trying to ease the tension, though my heart was beating a little faster. "Well, if I've done all that, I'm glad. I never wanted you to go through life thinking you were alone." He nodded slowly, as if my words had landed somewhere deep. Then he turned back to the wall, picking up his brush, but the mood in the room had shifted. We went back to painting, but now every little glance, every brush stroke, felt like it carried something unspoken. And I knew this wasn't the last of that conversation. Something was building, quietly, between us. The room felt smaller after that, like the walls had drawn a little closer to listen in. I kept painting, but the brush started to slow in my hand, the bristles dragging through the paint tray as if they, too, were undecided. John moved the ladder to the next corner, careful, deliberate, a man stretching out time because he wasn't ready for the next sentence. Finally, he broke the quiet. "Can we take a break?" I set my brush across the rim of the can and nodded. We stepped into the kitchen, where the afternoon light had turned honey-colored dust motes floating in it like slow confetti. The counter was cluttered, screwdrivers, a level, a folded measuring tape, a bowl that used to hold apples but now held screws. I rinsed 2 mugs and put the kettle on. The small domestic sounds, water, metal, the click of the burner, giving us both a place to stand while we searched for words. He leaned against the doorframe with his arms folded, not defensive exactly, more like he was keeping something important from spilling out before he had the right container for it. "Mom," he said, looking at the floor, "can I say something without you trying to fix it?" That startled a laugh out of me. "I can try," I said. "No promises." He smiled, grateful for the joke, and then his face settled into seriousness again. "I think I've been walking around with this idea that I'm supposed to be okay. Like, if I'm not the one holding it together, everything's going to fall apart. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's how I feel." The kettle hummed louder. I watched the little ripple form in the water through the glass lid and felt a matching ripple inside me. Familiar, maternal, the old urge to smooth the surface. I took a slow breath and nodded, trying not to jump in. "I'm listening." He rubbed his jaw, thinking. "When Dad left, you became, I don't even know, the person who made oxygen for the house. You cooked and you worked, and you still found a way to make the holidays feel like holidays. I guess I learned to either be useful or be quiet. Lately I've been both, and it's wearing me down." The kettle clicked off. I poured, letting the steam curl up into my face. The scent of black tea filled the kitchen. Simple, warm, something steady when everything else shifts. I handed him a mug and wrapped both hands around mine like a small fire I could hold. "What do you need from me right now?" I asked. He looked at me then, and it was like somebody opened a window in his eyes. Honesty, but the kind that doesn't try to offer solutions in the same breath. I carried our mugs to the small table by the window. The chair creaked as I sat. "Okay," I said softly. "You have it." He stayed standing a moment longer, and I could see him decide, like watching a diver on the board choose to jump. He sat across from me and swallowed, the tea too hot, the moment even hotter. "I've been lonely," he said finally. "And I don't mean I need more people around. I mean I've been carrying too much weight in silence. I think I forgot that even grown men need permission to be held together by something other than their own willpower." The word permission caught me between the ribs. My fingers tightened around the mug. I felt the years stack up behind us. Bandaged knees, lost sleep, late-night talks, a front porch where we listened to summer rain, like little stones in a path that had brought us here. I placed my mug down carefully. "You don't need my permission to feel," I said. "But if it helps, I'm giving it to you anyway. You can bring the whole mess here. I'm not going to love you less for it." His mouth twitched, like he was holding back a tremble. "I was afraid you tried to remind me of all the ways I'm strong." "That's easy to do," I said. "It's harder to sit with you when you don't feel that way. But I can do hard things." He gave a half laugh, half sigh. The kind that sounds like a door being unlocked. The kind that says, "I'm still here." We sat like that for a while. No rush, no need to hurry the heart. The tea cooled. Outside, a negr's dog barked twice, and then decided it was too tired to keep up with its own alarm. I noticed the small things, the repaired crack in his countertop, the way the afternoon made a rectangle of light on the floor, our shadows angled into it like two hands reaching toward each other without touching. "Can I ask you something different?" he said after a moment. "Go on." "I need a new way to talk to you, not just the how's work and did you eat way. I need us to practice telling the truth without the instinct to protect each other from it. I felt that inside me like a bell. Protective love is a mother's first language. But there's another language too, the one where protection looks like trust. "I can try," I said. "Tell me what that looks like." He thought, eyes on the tabletop's wood grain. "Maybe it looks like asking before we step onto the more tender places. Like, are you in a good place to hear this? Or, can I tell you something heavy? And maybe it looks like you telling me when it's too much, and I'll find another way to carry it." A small smile warmed my face before I knew it was there. Consent, even for conversations. "Exactly," he said, relieved I'd named it. "I've been thinking about how powerful it is to be asked. It makes the yes feel like a choice, not a chore." "Then let me ask," I said. "Is now a good time for me to tell you something heavy?" His eyes lifted to mine, steady. "Yes." I took a breath. I didn't plan to say it. But the room had that kind of softness that makes truths brave. "When you were little, I tried to be both parents. I never wanted you to feel the hole that was left. But the truth is, I was scared a lot. And sometimes the only way I knew to keep the fear from spilling over was to tidy the house or make another pot of soup or remind you to finish your homework. My love got noisy. I think sometimes it made you quiet." He blinked, and whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't that. His voice went gentle. "I remember the soup," he said, a loose smile. "You kept us warm with it." "I'm learning to keep us warm with words, too," I said. "So here they are. I'm proud of you in the ways I've said, and in the ways I never have language for. I'm sorry for the times my worry took up too much room. And I want to know you as you are now, not just as the boy I kept safe." He reached across the table, palm up. A small offering. I looked at his hand, larger than mine now, nicked with little cuts from work, calloused where life had asked more of him. I placed my hand in his and felt the temperature of his skin, the steady pulse in his thumb. Nothing dramatic. No grand speech. Just contact that said, "I'm here, and I'm not leaving the room when it gets real." We stayed like that for a while. The silence changed shape. It wasn't avoidance anymore. It was a shelter we'd made together. He squeezed my fingers once, and I squeezed back, a quiet yes. When we let go, something in both of us had rearranged. The kitchen felt roomier, as if we'd moved a heavy piece of furniture and found space we didn't know we had. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "There's one more thing." I nodded. "Ask first." He smiled, learning already. "Are you in a good place to hear it?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it. I don't want to be the reason you keep putting your own life on hold. You show up for me, always, but I want to make sure you're showing up for yourself, too. If you ever need to say no to helping me because you're tired, or you have plans, or you just want a quiet evening, that's okay. I won't love you less for choosing yourself." I stared at him, moved by the unexpected gift of it. How many years had I imagined being needed was the same as being loved? "Thank you," I said, and my voice surprised me by catching. "That's kinder than you know." "I think I do know," he said softly, "because I've been learning it myself. A car door thumped outside. Somewhere down the block, kids shrieked with the wild joy of a game that had no rules beyond running until you couldn't anymore. The ordinary world kept going as it does, even when your interior one shifts on its axis. We gathered ourselves and drifted back to the living room. The sun had slid lower, laying a longer stretch of gold across the floorboards. We picked up our brushes. The walls waited, blank and honest, for us to try again. As we painted, the talk came easier. Not everything needed to be said today. We could build the room in layers, primer, color, touch-ups, just like the conversation we'd started. He told me about a project at work he wasn't sure he could lead but wanted to try. I told him about the book club I'd been thinking of joining and how, if I'm honest, part of me still felt silly walking into a new room alone. He said he'd come with me the first time if I wanted. I said I might just take him up on that. The last inch of daylight slipped away. We stood shoulder to shoulder, looking at the wall we'd finished. It wasn't perfect. There were edges that needed cleaning up, a spot near the baseboard where we'd been too generous with the brush. But it was ours, and it was better than it had been. He set his brush down and cleared his throat. "Mom." I turned, waiting. "Thank you for asking before stepping onto the tender places. And for letting me ask, too." I smiled at him, feeling it all the way down to the years that had made us. "We'll keep practicing," I said. "That's the promise." He nodded, and the nod felt like a vow. We didn't try to seal the moment with anything larger than it needed. We just started cleaning the brushes, the water turning cloudy in the sink, the paint spiraling away, leaving the bristles soft and ready for whatever comes next. The next morning, the sunlight poured into my kitchen in that quiet, forgiving way it does after a long conversation, the kind that leaves you lighter and heavier all at once. I sat at the table with my coffee, the steam curling against my cheek, replaying little pieces of the day before. I thought I'd just been helping John with his living room. I hadn't expected to step into something deeper, something that felt like a door we'd both been walking past for years without opening. And now it was open. The phone buzzed beside my mug. A message from him. "Got time to finish the other wall today?" There was a smiling face at the end, but something about the question felt like more than paint. I typed back, "Of course, but only if we get lunch after. My treat." When I arrived at his house, the air inside smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee. He'd already moved the furniture away from the far wall, drop cloths spread neatly across the floor. "You work fast," I said. "Figured I'd save you the heavy lifting," he replied, and there was a warmth in his tone that hadn't been there before, not because it wasn't possible, but because he'd never let it show so plainly. We painted side by side for a while, the soft rhythm of brush against wall almost meditative. Every so often, I'd glance over and catch him looking thoughtful, like he was still carrying something unsaid. "You've got that face again," I teased gently. "What face?" "The one you get when you're deciding whether to speak or stay quiet." He smiled, not denying it. "I was just thinking about yesterday, about how different it felt to talk that way. I'm realizing I've been holding on to this idea that protecting people means keeping things in. And now," I asked, keeping my strokes slow and steady, "now I think protection might be letting someone in before you think you're ready, trusting them with the unpolished version of yourself." I let his words hang there a moment. "I guess I've been learning that too," I said. "Though for me, it's been about letting you carry some of my weight instead of trying to do it all myself." He set his brush down and looked at me, serious but not heavy. "Then maybe this is what helping each other actually looks like. Not just showing up with a tool or a ride or a meal, but showing up with the truth." I felt my chest warm, like the room itself had leaned closer. "That's a good kind of help," I said. We finished the wall before noon. The color settled evenly across it, a soft, welcoming shade that seemed to change in the light. As we packed away the supplies, John said, "You still up for lunch?" The cafe was quiet, a few regulars murmuring over coffee and sandwiches. We chose a table by the window, sunlight spilling across our plates. Conversation came easily, small stories about the week, the kind of talk that lives in the safe, everyday spaces. But beneath it was that new current, a shared understanding that didn't need to be named every time to be felt. Halfway through, he set his fork down and said, "You know, Mom, yesterday wasn't just about me talking. It was about me seeing you. I think I've been so focused on how much you've done for me, I haven't stopped to really notice you as your own person." I blinked, a little caught off guard. "And what do you see?" He smiled, not rushing his answer. "Someone strong, yes, but also someone who's still learning. Someone I want to know, not just as the woman who raised me, but as the woman who's still writing her own story." My throat tightened. "That means more than you know." "I think I do know," he said quietly, "because I'm trying to do the same thing." We lingered over lunch, neither of us in a hurry to leave. When we finally stepped back outside, the sky was bright and clean, the air just cool enough to remind us that seasons were shifting. As we walked to our cars, he paused. "Mom, thank you for helping me yesterday, and not just with the wall." I smiled, feeling the truth of it settle somewhere deep. "And thank you for letting me help the way you needed, not the way I thought you needed." He gave a little nod, a kind of unspoken promise that we'd keep this up, not just the projects and the meals, but the conversations that asked and waited for a yes before stepping closer. Driving home, I thought about the wall we'd painted, fresh, clean, different than before. Not perfect, but better. And I realized that was us too, still standing, still here, still willing to keep adding color to the spaces we share. And for the first time in a long while, I felt certain helping each other could mean more than either of us had ever imagined.